Good morning. My name is Chris Fox, and today we are talking about dopamine, specifically how we can convert it into adrenaline and why that's important. Dopamine just makes you want stuff. It doesn't really have positive benefits in your life. It's why doom scrolling Reddit or constantly checking Facebook or Instagram for notifications is not really beneficial to you, but you do it because you crave. That's what dopamine does. It makes you crave. Well, adrenaline makes you do, and as a writer, which sounds better to you, craving or doing? To me, doing is where it's at. So converting our dopamine into adrenaline is very attractive to me. I want to be more productive. So how do we do that? Well, I spent a lot of time researching this, and I've kind of put those theories into effect since my last dopamine video, and it's worked tremendously well. I'm getting a lot more done, and I've made some important changes. So I guess to start at the beginning, it all goes back to a study, and this study was conducted on 5-year-olds. And what this study did is it had them color for a little while. So just like my son, they'd get out some crayons and a piece of paper and go to town and have a blast. That's what kids do, right? We've all colored. But they gave it an interesting twist. They gave the kids a gold star reward. If you finished a coloring, a drawing, and you brought it to them, they would give you a gold star. This changed the nature of the activity. And what they found is that when they stopped giving the kids the gold stars, they never picked up the crayons again. They never chose that form of entertainment. They would go to other forms of entertainment. So the reward structure, which was intended to get them to do it more often, actually ended up preventing them from doing it, and they never did it again. And I can think about this in terms of my own life. If I've done that, where I've given myself big rewards, bigger rewards become necessary. So I tell myself, okay, if I finish this novel, Chris, if you write it and you finish it, then you get to buy yourself a solar generator or something crazy. You know, that's great. But then what happens when I write the next book? You have to keep upping that ante. And what you're doing is you're taking the dopamine that used to be associated with the activity itself and associating it with a big spike at the end, the celebration when you complete it. And that does a lot more damage than I ever would have guessed. What we should be doing is releasing dopamine the entire time. Another great example for me is role-playing games. I love role-playing games. You see the top shelf behind me, there are a few role-playing games there. The vast majority of them, though, are in the house. I'll get a picture and I'll flash it up there so you can see just how many of these books I have. I have read all of them, too, many times. So some of these I've read 2 and 3 times. As a game master, I needed to know every bit of trivia and lore about these worlds, and it was so much fun to do. It's a huge part of my life, and it's the most fun activity that I am aware of in terms of consistency throughout my life. Like, if you ask me, what do I want to do? I probably want to role play. Till about 2 years ago, I made the mistake of tying role-playing in with my career. I created my own role-playing game and released it and tied up money in it, and I had to run a Kickstarter around it, and then I built an audience in that role-playing game. And all these are good things, but it changes the nature of the process itself. And from then on, I was in a fishbowl. I wasn't just playing, I was playing on camera. And that's a very different thing. And it ended up not like killing my love of it, but damaging my love of role-playing. I didn't want to do it as much. And I started realizing the same is true of other parts of my life as well. If I gamify it too much and I tie too many external reward systems to it, then I stop loving it. As an author, having to produce novels all the time, I don't love writing as much as I did when I could just do it for fun. I mean, there's no way around that. But I have managed to reclaim a lot of my love for it, and that's by implementing the process we're talking about here in this video. I started converting my dopamine once more into adrenaline, and I did it by loving the writing. So this is a process I've perfected with many skills. The first place that I tried it and it worked astoundingly well was working out. Picking up large, heavy objects that do physical damage to your body is not fun to do, especially not at 5 in the morning. But I can't think of anything I look forward to more. Like when I wake up in the morning, I'm excited. I'm like, oh, I get to go pick up some weights. Because in my brain, I've convinced myself this is a positive activity and that the pain associated with picking up those heavy weights is going to make me bigger and stronger and going to have so many great effects. So I've learned to love the process. And that is what we need to do where dopamine is concerned. Learn to love the process. And if you get involved in the process and you get into flow, that is where dopamine turns into adrenaline. So it becomes epinephrine, which is just a synonym for adrenaline, and you can then accomplish a lot more than you otherwise would be able to do so. So that's a huge goal for me. And getting there requires practice, obviously. But if you're doing writing sprints like we normally do, and you're just following through the process, the same process this channel has taught for 7 or 8 years now, then you're already halfway there. You're definitely much closer in terms of being able to convert that dopamine into adrenaline and just kind of get stuff done. The only other thing I might add is on top of the process that you're setting up, you're clearing your decks before you start a writing sprint, make sure you're not doing anything that gives you a large spike of dopamine right before the activity. So it doesn't matter what that dopamine is. Maybe that's checking your sports scores in the morning because you're part of a fantasy football league. Whatever it is, don't do it. Do not put any large dopamine hits before that. I don't even check my email. So you're not getting any other hits of dopamine, and the first dopamine that you're working with and converting to adrenaline is, oh, I'm sitting down and I'm cranking out X number of words, whatever my daily quota is. So you're basically doing the work first, and you're making the dopamine last the entire time. You're not focused on the reward at the end of it, which is, oh, I get, a bagel or whatever it is that you've set up as a reward structure. Focus primarily on the activity and its completion. And if you can get yourself to do this, I don't know, I enjoy it more. I've been doing this probably for a few weeks now, where I'm trying to take away more of the external rewards and focus more on the activity itself and gamify that. And that's been fun. I'm looking at my words per hour again more closely, and tracking that improvement is enjoyment for me. So that's working really well. Anyway, I hope this video is useful. I understand that dopamine can be a bit of a sensitive topic. If you are on the spectrum, if you do not have normal dopamine, I know that this video has to be looked at differently. We'll talk about that in the comments. But even for you guys, like if you are dopamine deprived or starved, this is something that you can start to change. This is something that you can modify. And I'm not a scientist. Go talk, or not a scientist. I'm not a doctor. Go talk to your doctor to figure out how best to do this. But don't give up hope. I know it's hard, but it is something that you guys can work on. Anyway, for the rest of us, I've worked really hard on my dopamine and on my productivity, and you guys saw my schedule in the last video. You know how little time I actually have to write these days and how much more of my time is spent with my family. So I really have to optimize it, and this is letting me do that. I set up that tortoise enclosure, as we've talked about, and I just play, and writing is fun again. I hope this is useful. I don't know if it is. We could discuss it in the comments. Let's talk about dopamine and strategies to convert it to adrenaline and how that's accomplished. I got to get back to the writing, and I'll see you guys next week.